Hi, this is Lane and Paul from Trending, Who, What, When, and Where. And today we're going to talk to Michael Landis, who's going to be telling us all about Savencia cheeses. You might want to talk a little bit about all your years of experience and certificates. Boy, this is really impressive.
Well, thank you. You know, it's an interesting journey because it wasn't something that I had planned. I was in multiple industries, so this journey, I think, is very typical to a lot of people that think that they wanted to go somewhere and they ended up somewhere else just because it ended up being so much fun. And that's really what happened here. I have been teaching cheese for about 15 years. I've been in the food and beverage industry for about 25. I've been lucky enough to be able to be in the, I would say, infancy of the cheeses. I started off in Europe, actually. I was stationed in Italy when I was a little young pup, and while I was stationed there in the Marines, I had an opportunity to spend some time in vineyards. And one of the things that I found really interesting was that a lot of the foods were just from their regular area. They weren't importing anything from Rome or other areas. Everything was sourced locally. And so a lot of the recipes were based on their local terroir. And it was very interesting growing up in Iowa, where when we needed something, we'd get stuff from California, we'd get stuff from all over. So it was a really interesting portion of my, I guess, learning experience and direction where I picked this, I guess, direction to enjoy foods and to be more curious about where they come from. So throughout my life, I've always enjoyed foods. I've always enjoyed pairings, beverages. So my cheese career started after I had left a beverage career. I was in wine. I was a regional manager for a fine wine division. I had done a lot of beer work. I worked for a distributor handling all their draft kegs and beers and designing systems. So I had a lot of experience with beer, had a lot of experience with wine and spirits. So I thought it was kind of natural that I would be able to get into getting into teaching food. So I've been an educator for about 25 years in different careers. But getting into this, it was really very different. I started in 2005 with an international company, one of the largest importers in the United States. So I cut my teeth on the ability to be able to learn more about European cheeses. And at the time in 2005, American artisans were just really starting to come around. They were there, but they weren't mainstream. And so in my career, as I was learning, I was developing an education, particularly with Europeans. And I started getting an interest in American artisan. and literally changed companies from a company that was predominantly European to a company that was purely American artisan. So it was really interesting going from those two. So 6 years into my career, I had been teaching retail, food service, people that in the industry that needed to know more about cheese. And I was inducted into the Guild of International Fromages, which is that symbol up there, and that is actual medal that is given out to each of the participants or those that are inducted into the guild. And the guild is a very old guild. It's kind of back in the day when there was a silversmith, they would go to the ServerGuilde, goldsmith, they would go that. Well, and the same thing with the cheese. And so I was inducted as somebody that had brought a lot of knowledge and a lot of different perspectives to it and encouraging more education in the industry. So in 2012, the American Cheese Society started their certified cheese professional exam. So there hadn't been an exam ever up to this point. And so I'm part of the inaugural class. It's an extensive exam. It's about 150 multiple choice questions. There's no tasting involved in it, but the questions range in 11 different areas, including importing and different aspects of the cheeses above and beyond what you would find in working in a retail establishment. So it's a very formidable exam. Even today, there's just about 1,000 of us, 8 years later. In 2015, I took my Masters Sommelier exam and passed that. I always knew a lot about wine, but I never really bothered to get the certification. And I really wanted to get a little bit more formal education in that direction. I followed that by the certified Cicerone beer server, which is pretty much similar in beer. So getting those two. And then in 2018, the American Cheese Society decided that they were going to go to a new format and add in an exam. And this exam was the Certified Cheese Sensory exam. This is different than the American Cheese Society Certified Cheese Professional, where the sensory is only really about tasting. And so it's really the area of being a judge and your ability to be able to judge and determine the differences. But what they're looking for is a specific direction about how you would find a good or bad part of a cheese. In other words, something that would be off and you would be able to know that, something that would be a positive, and variation. So it was very fortunate that, that this exam came around in 2018, because in 2010, I started judging cheese internationally. I first started at the World Cheese Awards in England, in London, and I was able to really get with a lot of judges and learn more about how judging was done and become a little bit more, I guess, understanding the parameters of each of the cheeses and what we would look for. From there, I went to the International Cheese Awards, and from there, I went to the Global Cheese Awards. So I randomly judge at each one of those, but not all three of them in the same year. So it'll be one or the other, or just a couple of them. And last year, I was appointed by the International Cheese Awards as the ambassador for North American cheeses, helping out both the USA and Canada in representing them in Europe. And I was also appointed a supreme judge at the International Cheese Awards. So what happens is there's about 190 to 200 judges that go through and judge the top categories. The supreme judges were responsible for taking the top of those and narrowing down that to the best, to the second best, to the third best, and bringing them all the way down. So every year, that's how you get the best cheese in the world, would be by one of the supreme judges there's 8 of us, and then we work through that and determine which would be the best of all the cheeses. So in addition to being able to judge and to be able to teach cheese, I'm also an award-winning brewer. One of the things that I've always found is that beer does really well with cheese. And knowing the characteristics of that, and also learning more about brewing. I've been a home brewer 30 years. My family has been home brewing. I know a lot of friends at home brew. I've known a lot of brewers. So developing recipes was kind of a hobby. And then I collaborated on a beer with a local brewer, Chris Johnson, with 610 Brewing. And we created a black lager. And I love black lagers because they're malty, but they're light. So they really work well with cheese because of the maltiness, but also they don't really invoke any other hops or anything like that. So they're very cheese friendly. So we took it to the Great American Beer Festival, and we beat out 72 other beers to be the best black lager in America, like theoretically in the world, but not all countries are represented there. So I have a gold medal for that. I also have several other beers that have other medals. So it's kind of fun. So when I'm pairing, I'm able to draw on my experiences with food, my experiences with beer, my experiences with wine. So I have all these things that I can bring to the table when I'm teaching or I'm just really introducing cheeses to people. So it's really fun for me to be able to sit down and spend time talking about cheese and talking about all the things that you can do, the really fun things, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And that's one of the things about cheese, is that entertaining with cheese is literally laborless. I mean, honestly, all you need to do is get a piece of cheese, unwrap it, put it on a plate, put a knife next to it, and you are entertaining with cheese. But a lot of people, they want to get jiggy with it. They want to get stuff and they want to have it blending here. And you know, you can make it a meal. You know, we have several here that would continue on a meal. Some of them might be more dessert. Some of them may be more meal. Some of them might be in between meals. But the idea would be is that creating a little bit more enhancement of the cheese, not as a, I need to cover it up. I need to add this and that. So when you're doing pairings, and when I do pairings, a lot of times we talk about the ability that they work together or they don't interfere with each other. That's what we want. We don't want an accompaniment to go too far. We want the cheese to be the center at all times, no matter what. The cheeses that I'm going to talk about today are from one company called Savencia. And Savencia is a very well-established French company that has a wide variety of cheeses. They have a wide variety of support. They're producers, they're milk producing, they're cheese producing. So they have a wide area that they work with. And they have some of the best and well-known cheeses ever. The cheeses that we talk about a lot of times are very established as cheeses. Some of them for hundreds of years, some of them as young as 30 years ago, but they have been made somewhere along the line through the process. And that's what's really interesting about a company like Savencia, that they're able to bring in this kind of diversity in the cheese board. So when you look at building a cheese board, one of the things you think about is the diversity of the cheeses. Go on, go on. When we look at Savencia, they bring a wide variety of cheeses across the board, literally. When you think about it, we have a really nice diversified cheese board where we have a soft ripened bloomy rind, we have a washed rind, we have a pressed cheese, we have a blue cheese. So when you look at this variety that you have, you really cover pretty much what most people would use during entertaining. And that's really the fun thing about this company, is that they really bring a nice diversity, but they also bring some of the highest quality cheeses made in France and in Europe. So the first cheese that I'd like to talk about is Saint-André. And Saint-André is a very unique cheese. As you can see, it looks like a large cake. And that is really what distinguishes it from a lot of the what's known as soft ripened bloomy rind cheeses. Soft ripened bloomy rind cheeses come in many different ways. Their main style is brie. But as you saw from that, and what you look here, is that this is not a flat cheese like a brie is. This is what's known as a specialty cheese. And Saint-André is also known as the heavenly cheese. And the reason for that is because it is what's known as a triple crème. So there's different amounts of cream in each of the styles of cheese, which makes them very different. So when you're going to buy a brie or a specialty cheese like this, you have a choice of a single crème, a double crème, a triple crème, and a camembert, plus the specialty style. So brie or soft ripened bloomy rinds have a uniqueness to them where they ripen from the outside in. So what happens is as this is ripening, the buttery flavor is starting at the outside and working its way in. So being really thin as a brie, by the time that you buy it, it's completely ripened all the way through and the buttery flavors are all rich. Now this rind is completely edible. It is a what's known as Penicillium candidatum. And they add this on there and it creates a bloomy rind. It protects the paste. In other words, if we didn't have the rind, it would just be gooey paste. So the rind is what protects it. But also, in the process of building the rind, it also creates the buttery flavors. So what happens is if you've ever had a fresh cheese and it was nice and tangy, that's what's known as lactic. And so what happens is that as the rind is building, the lacticness is eaten and you're getting more buttery cream, all right? But in a specialty cheese like this, because it ripens from the outside in, what's going to happen here is that it's not going to ripen all the way through. So what's going to happen is you're in the center of this, it's actually going to have a little bit of tanginess, a little tangy cream like a sour cream. So you're going to have butter, sour cream, and mushroom. And because this is triple crème, which means it's about 70 to 75% dry fat matter, that it's going to have a lot of butter, but it's also going to make for a very mild rind. And so this cheese goes fabulous with a lot of different things that you can do with it. It's very easy to be able to pair up, but it works just as well as taking a chunk of French bread and slathering it on the French bread. That is just as good because it's just got so much butter and so much cream that it just works across the board. All right. So for me, I wanted to bring out a little bit more of a richer flavor and to kind of play around a little bit with that. So my pairing is going to be a very traditional pairing that you would find anywhere. Pairing up Saint-André. One of the things that you'll find with bloomy rinds is that a lot of people use figs. A lot of people use, as a matter of fact, they'll use fruit to it. Fruits work really well with cheese across the board. And figs especially, they've been around for a very, very long time, obviously. Instead of using fruit, using a fig spread. Now this particular cheese, when you think about how you're going to serve this, you know, a lot of people just put this out and then your guests are like, I'm afraid of eating the rind, so I'm just gonna chew out the center. And that happens, it actually happens a lot. So what you can do is you can actually divide this in half and create little mini pieces. So you're not working with the whole thing and you can divide it up. And you can see this has been out for about an hour. Now you want to leave the cheeses out when you're entertaining for at least that because you want it to be room temperature. Cold, you don't really get the flavors. You can see how creamy this is. So you now actually have a little bit of a vehicle because you're holding the rind in your hand instead of holding the paste, which is gooey and sticky. So then this is Perseverance Society, and they make a fig spread that is fabulous. They're out of Virginia. And then a Marcona almond. I know that sounds crazy, but just a little bit of an almond on here, and you really get a kind of a little bit of a nice little presentation. You can pre-build this if you want. You can have it all set up and put it on a plate, put it in the refrigerator, cover it up, and then put it out an hour before and serve it. So you can, do that, or you can make your guests build their own. But this is a really nice way. So what's going to happen here is that this fig spread is naturally sweet from the fruit, not from additives. There's no sugar in here, but it'll seem very sweet. So there's butter in here. So what's going to happen is the butter is going to take away the sweetness and give you more of the fig flavor. Then the fig is actually going to bring out a little bit more of the buttery flavor, and the nut is there to give you a little bit of balance of flavors. So that's a really great way to be able to build a little cheese board and a little way to be able to balance these out. And if you're going to pair this, you could pair this with many different things. There's different styles of wines that you can use. You can use, a lot of people use champagne. Champagne's a great way to be able to go. It's part of the celebration of having the French Brie, French champagne. Chardonnay, Pinot Noirs work really well. Pinot Noir is a little earthy, and again, you get that rind, so you get that correlation, and the butter helps kind of bring the fruit out of the Pinot Noir. If I was going beers, probably stouts, porters, maybe even amber ale. I paired this up with a oatmeal stout with the actual maker of the oatmeal stout, and his wife was there, and she said, "Oh my God, this is like a chocolate cheesecake stout. It just brings out all the flavors." So don't be afraid to try different things with this particular cheese. This is a cheese that a lot of people are afraid of. So I'm gonna try to take everybody off the ledge when we talk about this.
Okay. Why are people afraid of it?
It's stinky.
Oh.
It's really aromatic. Yeah, that's what the dog here was. Yeah, smell that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not too stinky though. I've smelled stinkier.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's not too bad in the big scheme of things. It's definitely not bad. This is Chaumes, and it is a soft ripened washed rind cheese with an edible rind. And this is what's known as a washed rind cheese. A lot of people have, I would say, a little bit of a hesitation with washed rind because they can be aromatic. So this is Chaumes. This is a washed rind cheese. It is a very soft and creamy cheese. There are several varieties of washed rind. As a matter of fact, when you talk about washed rind, you actually have to define them as this being a soft ripened washed rind, because you can also look at a Gruyere. Gruyere is a washed rind cheese, and it's washed with a brine. And so the Chaumes is very much like that. There's some hesitation sometimes about the Chaumes because it can have a little bit of a aromaticness to it. It's a little bit aromatic in the respect of it has some yeastiness. This rind has a tendency to smell a little, some people say that it could be like a dirty sock. I don't think so. I think it's more like earth. There's an earthiness to this that is really absolutely beautiful. And the rind actually, like a soft ripened bloomy rind, like a brie, it also helps the taste of this cheese. In other words, you can see that this has got bulging and that it's just coming out. This is so soft and creamy. Without the rind, it would just be runny. So the rind really protects it, but it also gives it a little bit more of an earthy flavor. There's a lot of butter in this. And a lot of times when you talk about this style of cheese, this falls into like the Limburgers do. But the Limburger is a very, very mild, but it can be aromatic. All these cheeses, the longer they age, the stronger they become. So you can get one that's brand new that has very little aroma to it, and you can get one that's older that smells like, well, it's been around for a while. And so you kind of have that choice of where you want your cheese to be. But you can tell its ripeness by the amount of play and softness that you get in here. This has been out for about an hour, and it is showing signs that it's starting to kind of release itself a little bit. And that brings to be a little bit more of a creamier cheese. And this is about butter. It's about a little bit of earthiness, and it's also about a little nuttiness. There's a sweet nuttiness that's in here along with the earthiness, and it really gives you a nice flavor and a nice richness, where this could be, again, slathered on a crusty French bread and eaten just like that, because this has a lot of butter to it, but it has a little nuttiness too that really goes well with toasted bread, because you get the toastiness, and a lot of times they blend really well together. So you get that balance of flavor. So this, like the other cheese, like the Saint-André, they're both French cheeses. This is in the southwest of France. And this brings a very unique flavor to any cheese board, but you don't have to worry about it being so strong that people have to get used to it. It actually has such a great buttery, nutty, and earthy flavor that it goes very well with just about anything that you want to put up against it. I wanted to pair this with something that wouldn't be as sweet. This has got a nice savory flavor. This is something that you could turn this into an afternoon lunch. You could do this as a snack. You could do this in entertaining with your friends to be able to create a really fun cheese board that isn't going to be sweet, that's going to be nice and savory, and it'd be really a lot of fun for people that really want to bring something to the party that would be more substantial. So for this particular cheese, the pairing that I wanted to go with is very French. In other words, I'm using the Three Little Pigs, and it is a pate mousse. And this is chicken, pork, and wild mushroom, which I think is absolutely so interesting flavors that they just all bring this really richness to just that portion of it. But the two together would be kind of heavy. In other words, you got all the butter of the cheese, you got all of the mushroom and pork and chicken. So you need something to lighten it up. And that's where I would recommend these little French Three Little Pigs. These are sweet and spicy gherkins. Love these little guys because they give you a little bit of tanginess. And then to be able to hold up with it, this is a petite toast. So I think it's really fun, you know, to be able to create your own little sandwich here. You can take the piece here. Again, when handling this particular cheese, you can pre-cut it so you have slices, because a lot of people like to work with that, where you can have that. This is such a meaty cheese that you can actually cut it in squares to be able to actually go on the cheese. And one of the advantages of having the time of it being sit out is that it's going to be soft enough to actually conform to that. So all you have to do is take a little bit of the pate or mousse on here, and then unceremoniously, you can just wedge in your little treat there of the gherkin, and you have yourself a little snack, a little hors d'oeuvre to work with. So this is such a nice combination because you have the butter, you have the creaminess of this, you have a little nuttiness, and then you add in the flavors of the pate. Just bring this into a really nice savory hors d'oeuvre. And you know, if you're going to pair this, a Pinot Grigio, a Merlot, an American Zinfandel works magnificently with this. The Zins work really well because they have all that rich fruit to it. You can also pair up a beer. I would do a a stout or a port or an amber. Vienna lagers work really well as well because they have a maltiness to them and they have a cleansing, and that works really well, being able to work with that. And that's a lot of fun.
So how many different pairings do you go through before you find one that you actually like? I mean, do you really spend a lot of time putting all the different ingredients together, or do you have an idea in your mind what you think will taste good? Well, one of the advantages that I have of teaching cheese for 15 years is that in a typical year, I may do 25 seminars, full-blown, all day, maybe multiple day seminars, where I take particular cheeses with the cheesemonger or the buyer, and we pair up every single cheese. And we may have anywhere between 30, 60, or 90 cheeses, depending on the number of days in which I'm teaching. So over the years, I've worked with certain products that lend themselves really well to each of the cheeses. So I think that, that there are a lot of options that you can do, but there are also things that when you're pairing them that you know are going to work every single time and be a really good pairing. Bottom line, all pairings, no matter what, come down to like love. It's in the eye of the beholder. Not everybody's gonna like all of the flavors that come together. I have a lot of people that won't touch a wash drying just because it's aromatic and they feel that they can't get over the smell. And then I have people that won't eat a pate because it's liver. But you know, when you have all those flavors together, you're really tasting more of the chicken, more of the pork than you are of where it actually originates from. And that's the beauty of a pate. And then by adding in something that gives it a little bit of a spark, which is a sweet sour gherkin, yeah, you know, it helps balance out all of that richness, brings a little bit of tanginess in there. Kind of like when we pair with wine. You know, when we pair with wine, we're not there to wash out the flavor, we're there to enhance it. And so the things that you want to have with your pairing is you want to have them to be able to enhance it. You want to be together. You don't want one to be more powerful. It's kind of like people that, you know, that when you blend something, you know, you add a flavor to something and you don't want that to go away. You just want to add the flavor. And I mean, think about cooking. You know, if you're going to do chicken and rosemary, you don't want the dish to taste like a rosemary bush. You want the taste to taste like chicken with a little bit of rosemary to it, because that enhances the flavor. And it's the same thing here. We're not going to take away from it. We're just going to add in a little bit to bring it up to another level, like a chicken and rosemary. So this is Etorki. Etorki actually means origin in Basque language. It's made in the French Basque region of the Pyrenees. This is a very historical and very, very rich cheese that brings a lot of flavors and uniqueness to any cheese board. And this is a sheep's milk cheese. This is 100% sheep's milk. It's a magnificent, authentic cheese that has been made for a very, very long time, typically made only during the summer. And so what happens is it's two breeds of sheep that participate in this, in the making of this. So it's not just a wild, we just grab milk from anywhere. These are very specific about the milk that's used for this. So as the snow melts in the Pyrenees, they bring the sheep, and the sheep have just gone through their breeding. So we have all the fresh lambs out there. So we have brand new fresh milk that they're using for their lambs and that. And so this is basically where the lactation cycle starts. Now, sheep don't produce a lot of milk. It's actually very small, sometimes only a quart of milk per animal. So this is not a cheese that you're gonna find everywhere, but it is a cheese that you wanna look for. So in the spring, as the snow melts, they move the animals up into the Pyrenees,
and then they start free ranging out there in the grasses and milking them. And all during the summer, they're making this particular cheese. It is a natural rind cheese. It's a pressed cheese. They don't do a lot to it. It's got a lot of softness to it. This is, as you can see, it breaks off very, very easily. This is not a hard cheese at all. It's got a lot of softness to it. It's would be considered a semi-soft cheese in that respect. And it, because of sheep's milk has a lot more butter fat than cow's milk, and especially goat's milk. So there's a lot of richness to it. And you know, I get this comment all the time is that I'm afraid of sheep's milk and goat's milk because they would taste like the animal. Well, does cow's milk taste like cows? Because it doesn't. You really don't taste animal in this at all. You just taste a lot of butter, rich butter. And so this particular cheese is a very rich butter, but it has a tanginess to it. As you think about this, this is like a Havarti on steroids. It is so rich, so buttery, and it has a nice nuttiness to it. And when I say nuttiness, I actually mean a sweet nut, almost like a pecan or a sweet almond, because it's got such a nice, rich flavor to it. Anybody would enjoy this. This is, you know, like Havarti, having all that soft, rich flavor. And again, this is a very unique cheese. In 2018, it actually was voted as the best cheese in the world. So it has a reputation of being an extremely great flavored cheese. And it is, like I said, a little unique in its ability to be able to find it. Pairing of this though, this is another cheese that you can do so much with. This is like one of the go-to entertaining. You know, you don't want to have a dinner, but you don't want to have a non-exciting appetizer. And that's really where you would find with this one. So pairing up Etorki, I love a nice prosciutto with this. This works really well. Volpe does a nice traditional prosciutto. You can go Italian prosciutto. You can go anywhere with that. But with the prosciutto, it has a mildness to it. So you're not going to be getting a big flavor. Grilled green onions is or olives are really unique. And then for this, I do recommend a little bit of crunchiness, and the Rustic Bakery rosemary and olive oil organic sourdough flatbread, which is really a lot of fun. You know, gives you a lot of uniqueness in its flavor characteristic. So when we look at pairing for Etorki, Etorki has some really great flavors to it, and you don't really have to do a lot with this. It's kind of like Havarti. It'll blend in with anybody you bring with this. It just really takes on some of the flavors. So I prefer a little bit of a prosciutto with this. I don't want my salami or meats to be overly powerful, but this is really a rich, rich meat, and which can go really well with the Etorki. Got a lot of similar flavors that you're working with that. And then you need something, again, to be able to bridge all of that richness. And Davina does a grilled green olive. And I think that's really interesting because it has a very unique flavor of the grilling. So there's a slight smokiness to it. And so that little bit of smokiness, the meatiness of an olive, the prosciutto, and then the buttery flavor of the Etorki, they work really well. But to really bring it all together, you know, I'm using the Rustic Bakery, and this is an olive or a rosemary olive oil flatbread. And being able to put these guys together, this is such, like I said, don't worry about the rind. The rind is edible, so you can leave that on. It's a little chewy, but you can decide on whether or not you want to have that. So with your prosciutto, you know, you just need a little piece. And again, you can build this as a little appetizer and set up. So each one can be built up so you have a little snack. Some people like to build that up so their guests can just come around. So this is a fun little way of being able to present this in a very easy, balanced flavor of a pairing. And again, when you're pairing, you want it to be able to complement or work with the flavors. And with Etorki, with all that butter and the flavors, that little bit of nuttiness, that works out really, really well. And as for pairings, my favorite pairing with this is a Viognier. I really love the kind of like peachy flavor, really brings out more of the butter flavor. It also can work with Pinot Noir, a Cabernet Sauvignon, works really well with it. And let's see, I would also, Pilsners, Belgians, work really well, Belgian ales. And then of course you could do a nice simple wheat ale with it, which would be really fun. Esquirrou Ossau-Iraty is another sheep's milk cheese that's made in the Pyrenees as well. This is another Basque style cheese, but what makes this one different is that this one is actually a aged cheese or a harder cheese. So it's not as soft as the Ossau-Iraty is. So on this particular cheese, the Ossau-Iraty is the main difference here is the hardness of this, is that this is more of a, it's right after the Etorki and being a little soft, but it also has a little bit of a harder rind to it. So this is right on that edge of being a hard pressed cheese, not quite like a Parmesan or anything like that, more like a Gruyere thickness and intensity of the flavor. Again, this was a 2018 world champion. This is another PDO cheese, which is protected designation of origin. And Ossau-Iraty is a fabulous cheese that brings a nice, real richness to its flavor. It's got toasted wheat aroma. And again, 2 breeds of sheep produce this. And this is a seasonally made cheese as well as the Etorki is. So very nice in that respect. And a lot of people, this cheese has a great availability to it. And one of the really things that I like about this is that it has such a beautiful earthy rind. As a matter of fact, that was one of the things that really endeared me to this cheese. Having tasted probably over 1,000 different cheeses in my career, I get asked all the time, what's your favorite cheese? Well, you know, really, it's like anything. It's, you know, what are you hungry for? What do you like through there? I don't think it would be possible to say that there's one cheese. But I would say that if I was on a desert island, probably Etorki would probably be my choice because it's so diverse in its flavor. The animals are grass-fed, and they really bring out a really earthy richness to it, and I really love that. And so this is a really flavorful cheese. And by the way, the meaning of this means bell in French, and so this is I guess a very unique cheese to that respect of being so rich in its flavor, like Etorki, but more intense in its flavor. So the Etorki would be milder, this would be more rich. And that's the beauty of this particular cheese. And it has a great ability to be able to pair. And as a matter of fact, you don't really need a lot to this. You know, one of my best friends that does a tremendous amount of pairing in France, he's French and he's out there, and he just pairs blueberries with that. And that's what he swears by. He says, you know what, that's all I do is blueberries. And it's like, well, you know, in America, we don't really do a lot with blueberries. And we have them and they're more of a seasonal thing. But when you think about where these animals are, the fresh berries, things like that work out a very natural part of it. So in this particular cheese, I have a spread that I'm going to use. And this spread is from Bonnie's Jams. And Bonnie's Jams is as you can see, cutting this, it's a thicker, heavier rind. Is a wonderful natural jam, and the jam is blueberries and blackberries. And I thought that that would be really fun to be able to have that. And it also adds for a little bit of contrast on the cheese. So you're not working with the blueberries and getting the stain of the fingers and skewering these. You're able to spread this out. And this, again, very much like any spread, it has a natural sugar sweetness to it. So the butter and the cheese actually takes out the sweetness of this and gives you more of the fruit of the berry, of the blackberry, of the, the blueberry on here. So it tastes like you're actually tasting blackberry and blueberry. And then the fruit, the little bit of tanginess of the fruit brings out more of that rich butter and nuttiness. That's absolutely fabulous when putting these two together. So a really nice, simple pairing. Saint-André is a unique combination of smooth, creamy texture with a salty and tangy taste. Saint-André is a very unique blue cheese that brings a really nice balance of butter, tang, and a little bit of mushroomy flavor. Now, where we get that mushroomy flavor is from that beautiful blue veining that you see there. And a lot of people think about this cheese as just being so rich, so buttery, and very, very easy on the palate. And that is true, that this cheese is very easy. Saint-André is such a creamy, smooth cheese, and it is made up in the same area that Roquefort is made. Roquefort is made with sheep's milk, 100%, where this is cow's milk. So this gives us a complete different style of flavor that we would get from a Roquefort. Saint-André is on its own. When you talk about blue cheese, you really talk about a giant diversity of different flavors. For somebody that would say that I tried a blue and I didn't like it, would be the same as walking into the produce department of a store, taking a bite of a vegetable and saying, I don't like any vegetables. They're all different. Every blue is different. Every blue has its different characteristic. And, we do have probably our vegetables that we don't like. And we probably there are robust blue cheeses out there that'll knock your socks off. But Saint-André is not that. Saint-André is one of the creamiest, almost melt in your mouth. It's difficult to be able to handle on a cheese board, not because it's robust or anything. It's because it's so soft. It's creamy. This cheese can be mushed. It is so soft and it's got so much buttery flavors to it that it can cause all kinds of trouble when you're working with it for just that fact. So it has to be handled a little differently. This is another one of those French cheeses that you can get a toasted French bread, slather it on, and go to town. Because that is really, honestly, that is the best way to go. There's no other better way to enjoy Saint-André than just a chunk of bread and the cheese. Well, adding some wine or beer really makes a big difference too. But Saint-André is just a very rich cheese that brings butter, tang, and a little bit of earthiness to it. So this is not going to be a big, big cheese. This is going to actually be something really creamy that you can enjoy at any time. One of the things that you can do with this is add a little bit of honey to it. Honey works really well with almost all blue cheeses, and that's really a lot of fun. But for this particular cheese, I have a friend of mine that makes this really interesting cherries. And this is from Taste Elevated, and this is what's known as booze time cherries. And these are cherries that are soaked in brandy, amaretto, thyme, and spices, which gives it a really unique flavor and creaminess in the way that the cherries are. So with this particular cheese, I would say just take some bread, a little wedge of bread, smear this on, and then take one of these cherries and dash it on top. And then you have this really magnificent little nugget. The fruit of this brings up more of the butter. And as I talked about before, about the way that you use fruit, is that there is a little bit of tang in that cherry, which is going to be dropped down just a little bit by the richness of the Saint Agur. And you're going to get this really great sweet sour, you know, like what you love in a sea salt caramel. And it just brings out all those flavors. And the beautiful thing about having a little bit of French bread on that is it just brings a warmth to the flavors. And again, this is such an easy cheese to be able to enjoy. And don't be afraid because it's a blue, step out and embrace the rich buttery flavors. And you can see how much bluing is in here. And this bluing here adds to a very mild, I would say it's closer to a white button mushroom. When you talk about mushroom, that it's not an intense flavor. It just gives you a really nice balance of the butter, the mushroom, and the cream, because you can see just from it on how creamy that this particular cheese is. And I just adore this. There's another thing that you can do with it is 34 degrees, does sweet vanilla crisp. And a little bit of this, drizzle a little honey and the vanilla crisp, and you have yourself a dessert. And honestly, it is an amazing dessert. But this also can work in a recipe. Adding a little bit of this into a macaroni and cheese, adding this into a stroganoff, just a little bit of that adds the cream, adds the mushroom, adds the tanginess to it, and of course, it adds the butter to it. So that's really fun. It's a great cheese, very, very easy. So when you're thinking about pairing the Saint Agur, one of the beautiful things about Saint Agur is that it has a lot of variety, a lot of ability to be able to be with a lot of different wines and a lot of different beers, and even bourbons and spirits work really well with this particular cheese. I would probably do a Moscato. I'd do something a little sweet, a Côte d'Aron, if you want to go right in the middle there, works really well. And then a Cabernet Franc is that little bit of tannin that works with this, does very well. So it depends on whether or not you want it to be a dessert or you want to have it as more of an entree with a Cabernet Franc. If I was going to go beer, I'd probably do a pale ale. The reason for it is you need a little bit of hoppiness to be able to cut that. A light or a session IPA works really well, but you can't go wrong with an imperial stout. That's always one of those really good beers that go with it that you can put together, and they really balance flavors out. This is part of the Savencia collection of the French cheeses that they do, starting with the soft ripened bloomy rind, to the washed rind, to a semi-soft Etorki, to a little harder Ossau-Iraty, and then finishing up your cheese board with the beautiful Saint Agur. And this makes for such a great entertaining cheese board that you just can't go wrong with any one of these alone or all together.
Thank you, Michael. This has been just really fabulous. We've really learned a lot. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to us today.
Oh, my pleasure. I really enjoyed it myself.